right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. Brandon and Matt Law. We got the Law back to break down a lot going on here in early May. We're really in crunch time of the title race and the relegation race. And Matt, those are very hot right now. There's a lot going on in the Premier League, but to be fair, that's what you want.
Yeah. I mean, it's in a way, I'm a little bit disappointed because for so long I thought it was going to be a three-way title race right up until the final day, and we're back to a two-way title race, which you still get that sort of overarching feeling that City are just going to win their way in. And is it really a title race, or are we just sort of kidding ourselves? That's kind of on the back of my mind a little bit. But it does, the relegation is still there, still interesting. I've obviously still hoping Villa flop over the line for Champions League football, and there's a few European spots. So I really hope there's some stuff that goes to the last day. Maybe not the Champions League football-wise, I'll have a heart attack, but I hope some stuff goes to the last day. Otherwise, it can be a little bit fall a little bit flat if it doesn't.
Yeah, well, I think plenty to go there. Yeah, the Klopp farewell tour is kind of fizzled out, which is unfortunate for them. But we did our part in supporting that tour, unfortunately. But thankfully, there's a lot of positive momentum going on inside Chelsea right now. So I think there's a few different things I wanted to talk about. But realistically, I mean, I think we should just talk about Pochettino and the team, right? The awards were last night as of recording. So, that is probably a good place to kind of like see where the accolades went, because it's been a tough, I would say, season for most of it. But, the first one was the Academy Player of the Year, which is Alfie Gilchrist. I think that makes sense. This is almost like which Academy player got the most minutes probably on the first team. It wins this award, and Alfie's done it, and I think he's a good person for this one.
But that's the same for most clubs these days. It's most clubs don't flood their teams with academy players and don't have loads and loads making enough appearances to be in contention for Players of the Years and things. So the reality is most clubs' Academy of the Player of the Year awards goes to the academy graduate with the most minutes. And sometimes that can be very, 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 very few minutes. And in fairness, Alfie has been in and around it a lot and has really contributed. I mean, his performance, I didn't watch it all because I was at the Villa European game, but I've watched it back. And his performance against Tottenham looked absolutely superb, especially given, let's be honest, he had a hard night against Arsenal a week or so before that. So all credit to him. He deserves it. I'm really pleased for him. I don't know him, but I'm really pleased for him. And I think that's good. And I know there have been complaints about whether Pochettino could have used more academy players off the bench or given more minutes or anything. But that, credit where credit's due. That is a genuine academy player who's been given a real opportunity this season and to the most degree taken it.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think there's been some outstanding performances in the academy, but I mean, at the end of it, what the academy's there to help players break through. Yeah. Alfie's gotten the small contract extension. He's getting some minutes. So I think that makes sense. And then on the first team side, it's Cole with another brace. And this was the least surprising thing, right? So he got player voted by the first team squad, and then player of the year, which is voted by the supporters. But 24 goals, 13 assists. I mean, this wasn't even close.
It wasn't close, although I've jokingly talked about sort of Cole Palmer FC and the Cole Palmer team in pieces before, because I just find it quite fun to do. But in fairness, there are some other, honourable mentions here. Conor Gallagher definitely deserves an honourable mention. Had this vote been done in, say, January, I think Conor Gallagher was probably ahead of Cole Palmer at that time. Cole Palmer's come on very strong second half of the season. Not to say he didn't play well first half of the season. And then also Malo Gusto, who Cole Palmer apparently voted for himself. Malo Gusto's had a very, very good first full season at Chelsea. Injuries have disrupted it a little bit, and right backs, quite unusual for right backs to win Player of the Year awards. But it's not like there weren't other candidates. But I mean, look, that is to take nothing away from Cole Palmer. You could not have dreamed of him having a season like this. It is just unbelievable what he's done. It's going to be so fascinating next season to see how he develops and how he takes that on, and also how defenders try to cope with him, because I think teams will start to set up for him and start to make plans for him like they used to do with Eden Hazard. And hopefully that won't include just trying to kick him off the pitch that used to happen to Eden Hazard. But it's going to be fascinating to see that. But I mean, his first season has been staggering, absolutely staggering. It's up there with any of, best first seasons at Chelsea ever, I'd imagine.
It's definitely up there, especially for an attacker. And then you got to take in his age as well, right? Like 22, just turned 22. So it easily could have been in the U21 squads. To be fair, he's at City, and they're a tough team to break through, but he has absolutely found his home here. So yeah, I think well done to him.
Yeah, well done to him. He's done brilliantly. I think well done to, they get a lot of stick. I've given them stick, but well done to the sporting directors. That was a hell of a pickup at £40 million. When I remember when news came out of them signing Cole Palmer in the last knockings of the summer transfer window, there was an awful lot of talk around the fact they were spending £40 million on someone who barely played any Premier League games, and what a gamble that was. So you've got to give the sporting directors credit and the owners credit there for all the criticism elsewhere people give them. And also you've got to give Pochettino credit. You have to give Pochettino credit. A player doesn't just play like that without any support or guidance from their manager. It doesn't just happen by magic that a player integrates so well and plays that well and can play in a couple of different positions within a system. It doesn't just magically occur. The manager deserves credit, part of the credit for that. Pochettino would say it's all the players, because managers always say that. And it is 90% the player. 90% of the credit should go to Cole Palmer, but let's give 5% of the credit to the sporting directors and owners, and let's give another 5% to the manager, because they're part of his success.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure even Cole would appreciate all the assists he's gotten throughout the season. So you did talk about Conor, who, look, from like a sacrificing of, anything the club needs of him. He's been there, been the captain for almost the entire season because of injuries. He did pick up the community award. So essentially, I think, again, no surprise. And this is kind of like Mason Mount. He was the one doing a lot of the community stuff. He was a lot of the one doing the PR stuff. And Conor has just stepped in and filled that role as well. So he did get the community champion award as well, which, hey, is good. Like, he's doing it. We should at least acknowledge it.
Well, also, it's an indication of his character and attitude, because let's face it, he could have easily, even while he's playing well and playing, he could have easily sulked and been pissed off this season with everything around his future, and the fact he probably feels that he should have been given a contract bigger than the one that's ever been offered to him, and blah, blah, blah. And he could have easily, played and done what he needed to do without going any extra miles or doing anything extra. So it just shows the character of him. It shows what a good character and what a good guy he is to carry on doing the extra stuff for the club, and not sulking and not letting the other stuff interfere with his professionalism.
Definitely. The stat floating around was, a lot of assists, right? This season is what he's been able to provide, which has been great. The top 6 is how, it was being framed for.
Not just that. I mean, I think I had to look at some stats recently. If you look back at all Chelsea's ball recoveries and distances covered and everything like that, he's on the top of them. He's top of the ball recoveries at the top end of the pitch. He's top of the ball recoveries at the other end of the pitch. He's second or third in, if he's not first, and everything. His stats across the board are pretty incredible. The other thing is he's played as a number 10. He's played where he's playing now next to Caicedo in that sort of double pivoty type thing. He's played out wide on one of the flanks. Within games, he's had to fill in at fullback. He's played all over the pitch for Chelsea, and it's hard to really remember him having I don't think he had a great game when he had to start one game wide left. But apart from that, he's stepped into every single task he's been given absolutely brilliantly, and he's been given an awful lot of tasks.
And he's stayed healthy, which has been massive, massive, massive. But I guess we can just tangent on that Conor right now. I mean, it seems like the guy can't do enough. Future potentially still up in the air. I think you've kind of given some updates and things like that, but like, where do we stand with Conor? He just got the amazing TIFO, right, at Stamford Bridge, which again, if that's controversial, I don't know how to help you with that. So let's just focus on the positives for Conor and what's going on with him.
Look, I think one thing that has been missed with Conor and his future is the fact Conor doesn't. There is a third case scenario here where they don't sort out a contract for Conor, but he does actually still stay. I mean, all of a sudden, the prospect of a Tottenham move may not have appealed to him anyway because it's Tottenham. But if you just look at it from a sporting aspect, Chelsea could finish a few points behind Tottenham now at the end of this season, and all of a sudden moving to Tottenham if you compare it back in January, it doesn't look as attractive as it would have done. And I think the difference with him and Mason Mount, for my mind, is that Mason Mount had. You can say what you like about Mason Mount. I'm not getting into a Mason Mount debate with your listeners and watchers, but what he did have is last summer he had Liverpool, Arsenal, and Manchester United on the phone to him. Now, the Manchester United move hasn't worked at the moment. I still believe it will, but let's see. But whatever you think about Manchester United, those were the three options that he had sort of knocking down his door last summer. And I think there was probably a belief, both from the club and from him, that I'm not going to get better than these options. If I wait 12 months and see where I am, if the club still aren't offering me a contract, I'm not going to get better than these options. So now it's time for the club and me to make a hard decision. And the minute the club accept a bid, he's got the hard decision to make. And frankly, with those three clubs, you're not going to get better offers, so you make your decision. I think Conor's different. Unless Conor has got an Arsenal or a Man City or a Liverpool knocking on his door, given the form Chelsea have shown lately and given the drop-off of Tottenham, I don't think Tottenham necessarily puts the same pressure on him to make a decision this summer now. And I wouldn't rule out a scenario of them not agreeing a contract and Conor staying. And that doesn't mean Conor necessarily has to run down his contract and leave for free. I mean, it still opens the door to more negotiations at some point. But I just think that point's been missed. It felt like he either stays or goes this. He either signs a contract or goes this summer. Well, the other scenario is that nothing really happens and he stays, and we still have a bit more of this. So I just think that's worth pointing out at this stage. And he's certainly, what I would also add is, he's not going to get pushed into anything. It's too big a career decision for him. So, it's not like the club are going to be able to say, well, actually, if you don't sign a contract, we're going to push you towards a sale, because it's too big a decision for his career. No player in his position would get pushed into something they're not sure on.
Well, and I mean, yeah, he's in such a good spot too, right? Great form, consistent minutes. He's doing everything that you would kind of want him to do. I think I was looking real quick. He has well over, I think, 3,000 minutes played this season. So I'm
pretty sure he's the top outfield player now for minutes. Disasi was for a while, but Disasi's been a bit more in and out lately. I'm pretty sure Gallagher must have overtaken him on outfield players' minutes.
For sure. I mean, 47 appearances this season, right? So we'll see. But yeah, that contract through 2025 is definitely something they're going to take about. Like, Conor's in a good spot. Like, good for him. He's healthy, playing a ton of minutes, captaining his boyhood club. Like, good for him. Super, super happy. All right, well, let's pause, take our first break. When we get back, a lot more to do about this fantastic run of form for Poch and the Blues. So thank you to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right. Well, Matt, this is, I'm going to be honest, not something I thought we would be talking about at this point, but Chelsea are on a bit of a heater right now. If we look at the results and the form of the team, I think a lot of people are starting to pay attention. I think you can kind of, wherever you want to start that point, I think a lot of people have January. Some people had in December as well. But like the recent run of only one defeat in the last 12 matches is pretty good. Obviously, we have about as many draws as wins in there, but are we finally starting to see the light at the tunnel? I mean, what has really changed for you other than, and it might be this simple, but Cole Palmer and Nico Jackson are scoring goals?
No, I do think what's changed in the last month or so is that you can start to see. It might have happened a bit by accident. It might have been forced slightly by some injuries, but you can start to all of a sudden see a pattern of play, a plan, some teamwork, some relationships building on the pitch. I mean, you talked about Palmer and Jackson scoring goals, and if you actually watch those two, they work in tandem very nicely. You know, since Palmer's moved inside a little bit behind Jackson into that number 10, they actually link up pretty nicely. They exchange quite a lot of passes and things, and they seem to know where each other are. All of a sudden, Madueke seems to have a bit of a relationship with Palmer too. It just seems like relationships have been formed, and just feels like plans are starting to look as though they're taking some shape. And part of that is through a bit of fortune, through being forced into do things and try things, but also I think just time. I mean, we hate having to be asked for time in football, and no one wants to be patient, but a bit of time. I mean, it was all very messy at the start. People were in, people were out, constant change. It was constant injuries, but it's settled down a lot the last few months, partly because of lack of options, but also just partly because all of a sudden it feels like the manager knows more about who he wants to pick, and the players themselves are being a little bit more consistent. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to put your finger on one thing, but it definitely feels like steps have been taken. I don't think it's just a few random results or a few random happenings. I do think steps have been taken, and all of a sudden individuals, you can start to understand them a little bit more. You can start to understand their value to the team a little bit more, and also just the team itself. I mean, I before the last few months, I'd have struggled to name you what I thought was the best Chelsea team, and now the team that's played lately. I know that you can obviously argue, well, it'll be even better when Reece James comes back. It'll be even better when Nkunku comes back, but it's got a really nice balance to it at the moment.
So a couple of things that I've thought about too. The one thing I feel like that is very different is we don't have these fatal mistakes. You remember we went on a run. One player every single match would terrible back pass, would give it up in a bad position, a red card, whatever. Like we were constantly making just horrible mistakes. And that seems to have gone away as well, which when you don't just gift goals to the other team or massive advantages, that helps as well. I just think back like the Disasi back pass and things like that. Like he's not alone by any means. Like everybody was making these. Thiago was doing it, but like
Caicedo had a run of it, didn't he?
Yeah, it's tightened up, hasn't it? Like it's to your point, whatever it is, the team is more predictable.
Yeah, it's definitely tightened up. I think the discipline's got a lot better. I think this is twofold with the discipline. I think they've grown up and learned lessons a little bit, because the discipline in the first half of the season was dreadful. The referees have also become a bit more lenient again. You're not getting booked for kicking the ball away every time now. You're not getting booked for every time you argue against a decision, whereas at the first half of the season you were getting booked, and Chelsea's bookings were coming from those. But the discipline has got better, and that has helped performance as well. Just lately, I know that the Man U match is an outlier in this. They seem to be a little bit less emotional. Like they've at times this season, they've been such an emotional team. They ride the highs and then the lows are the lowest lows, but they seem to have ridden it better within games lately as well. Feels like just a bit of a growing up process, but you're still going to get, you are still going to get silly things in there because of the nature of the squad and the team. So the Arsenal thrashing, the draws against Sheffield United and Burnley, these things are still going to happen, but the stuff around them has become a lot more consistent.
Not to poke at you, I promise, but I actually think the Villa was one of our better results, down 2-0 at halftime, and had the resiliency to stick with it against a top 4 side, the table doesn't lie, to get the draw.
There are two things here, because I was at that game as a reporter, so I was trying to be unemotional about it. And the first half, I don't think Villa knew how they were 2-0 up, quite frankly, because even in the first half, Chelsea, with a better team, had all the possession, had a goal disallowed, had hit the post, looked like scoring every time they went forward. And I think Villa really only scored off those two attacks, one at the start of the half, one at the end of the half. Now, I think Villa will have gone in hugely grateful for being 2-0 up, wondering how they were 2-0 up. And I was wondering how they were 2-0 up. But when they went in 2-0 up, I thought, well, they're so lucky to be 2-0 up. Chelsea are going to be so demoralised by that the second half could be very different now. The second half could be Villa take control here and have got lucky in the first half and then take control. And it was the absolute opposite. Chelsea came on even stronger, played even better. And I fully, I don't think the goal should have stood, but I do fully agree that Chelsea actually deserved to win that game. Villa were lucky to get a draw in that game. Chelsea should have won that game and played excellently. And yeah, I fully agree. And that was the first time he made this tweak with Cucurella inverting, and that worked an absolute treat, and has worked a treat ever since as well. So yeah, that just felt, again, maybe that was the first time we've seen a real team spirit come together, that Villa game. There are probably other examples that I've forgotten about that you could say there's been a real team spirit. I mean, Man City at home was an obvious one. But that Villa game did show a real team spirit that has then since been obvious since as well.
For sure. And so, but it's also, I look back to the beginning of the season, it was like draw, lose, win, lose, draw, lose, win, lose. Like, it's just this pattern where there's no good runs. Obviously, we had the, kind of kicked off at the turn of the year with Palace, Luton, Fulham getting 3 in the trot, losing to Liverpool, losing to Wolves. But like, again, there's just been a little bit of confidence. I would say, if you look at it, and I haven't tallied it up, we're scoring far more goals today than we were in the first part of the season, but we're still conceding. Like, the defense is still an issue. I think we only have 23% of our matches have been clean sheets.
But everybody's conceding. I mean, I think
correct.
this is a league-wide thing. The Premier League, apart from Manchester City and Arsenal, have all sacked off defence this season. They've all sacked off defence. Everybody concedes. Tottenham concedes tons of goals. Villa concede a lot of goals. Man United concede an obscene amount of goals. I do feel there's been a move towards entertainment away from goals within the Premier League. It's getting wrapped up in we have to entertain, we have to entertain, we have to entertain. I do think that is a league. The only 2 teams you can take out of that are City and Arsenal, and Kelce there at the top of the league. But everybody else, it's not just a Chelsea thing. Defence across the board, Liverpool as well. Defence across the board has just gone out the window this season.
Well, and thank God then we've started scoring goals. Cole Palmer, well documented, brilliant success story. You have talked about it though as well, and obviously this isn't a secret, but like Nico Jackson is a different Nico Jackson than we had at the beginning of the season, and he's also benefiting from, I think, the duration of the season, and he's coming into form exactly when we need him. Probably going to beat Drogba's first season comparison. Although I would like to remind everybody that loves this comparison, it's not like this is a linear career progression. If you match Drogba's first season, you go on to be one of the greatest ever Premier League strikers and win it all. But it's a good indicator. Correct. I'll give you that. Do you think Poch's approach to this team has kind of been a father figure with a bunch of teenage boys to say, I'm going to go let you make mistakes. I need you to learn. I need you to grow and mature, because he hasn't gotten really animated. He hasn't said anything kind of inflammatory. He's just kind of like accepted ups and downs all season, to the, I think, frustration of the supporters. But it feels like if that was his approach, it might be finally starting to pay off. But I don't know if you see it that way with Poch.
Yeah, I do see it that way. And, you've got to remember Pochettino says it a lot himself, him and his staff. The one thing they've got an awful lot of experience and success at is developing and bringing through young players. They brought through a very big group of young players together at Southampton. And then they did it again at Tottenham, albeit with some senior players mixed in there. But again, a lot of young players and people who were just starting their careers. Obviously, Harry Kane and sort of Dele Alli being the most obvious, but even going down to people like Harry Winks. And they do know what they're doing, and they do know what they're going to get from young players, and they know that it's going to be a roller coaster. And you can't, when they have a bad thing or when they do something wrong, you can't go in two-footed on them immediately and kill them. You have to just ride it out a little bit. And he's done a lot of riding it out, and he's done a lot of accepting responsibility and accepting all the flack himself for what wasn't his transfer policy and what was a very young squad. But he's been happy to do that, and he has done it to the benefit of the team and the players. The only time he's really lost it with them is after that Everton game and the penalty incident. And even then, he said after the penalty incident, when someone said to him, "Are you going to punish them?" He said, "No, they just know what will happen now if that ever happens again. I'm not going to punish them, but they will know what will happen if they do it again." When Nico Jackson kept getting yellow cards at the start of the season, it was frustrating, and he got suspended straight away, and it was ridiculous. Yes, he made him run around the training pitch a million times, and Nico Jackson almost collapsed, but it was kind of done in fun as well. It was also a bit of a sort of piss-takey thing as well. He wasn't actually killing him, and he subtly does manage these lads well. He's had a few incidents with Noni Madueke. I've thought on a few occasions that it might be over for Noni Madueke under Poch, both due to Noni's bits of behaviour and also just Poch's reticence at times to trust him. And yet that seems to have helped Noni. Noni all of a sudden seems to have clicked into gear and is acting a much more mature footballer and person at the moment. So, yeah, there's a lot of examples of that. And I do agree that I think at times it was just a bit like, we're just going to have to ride this. You know, if it ends up in me being sacked or if it ends up in whatever, but we really don't have any option. All our options are injured. The transfer policy is what it is. We've got an average age of squad that's about sort of 23 or something. We're just going to have to ride it.
For sure. And I look at the most appearances list of like the top group to kind of see like who has Poch had to rely upon this season, whether or not he's wanted to or not, right? Because the injuries have been insane. But we talked about Gallagher with 34, Caicedo and Jackson with 32, Disasi, fresh face, 31, Cole Palmer, 31 appearances, Mudryk, 29, Fernandes, 28, and Thiago Silva, 28 as well. Probably not the group you would have predicted at the beginning of the season, because I think Nico Jackson was supposed to be a sport player. I don't know what Disasi's role was, but he got thrown into the mix right away. And Mudryk was obviously still finding his feet, thankfully, continuing to look a little bit better. But, it's been a revolving door for him too. It's not like we've had a core to rely on all season.
No, the opposite. I mean, he'd love a core to rely on the whole season. And that's why I do think within the praise for people like Nico Jackson and Cole is you've got to praise them for keeping fit. It is a big thing. It's a big deal. And, had one of those two got a long injury, Chelsea's season could have been an awful lot more tricky. But Caicedo's an interesting one. He's really come into his own lately, I think. I mean, we're really seeing what I think everyone hoped to see at the start of the season and start immediately. And, people sort of overlooked the fact of what a disrupted, he didn't really have a pre-season, quite frankly, let alone a disrupted pre-season. And we can see exactly what he is now. He's never going to be N'Golo Kante. He's not that kind of player. But he's been one of Chelsea's top three players in all of their last victories. He's had some absolutely. He was superb at Villa Park. He was superb against Tottenham. He's really looking the business now.
He isn't as good as N'Golo Kante on the defensive, maybe ball destroyer side, but he has a much better pass and range and ability and possession, which is great. He won't
carry the ball forwards, though, is it? Do you remember Kante because of his old days as a winger? Kante would occasionally just go on a massive run upfield.
Until he got to the box and then didn't know what to do.
Yeah, but he won't do that. But he's got a good pass on him. I agree with that.
He's just passed Nico Jackson and Cucurella for the most cautions on the team with 10 now.
Yes, he has got a fierce tackle in him. And I am surprised, actually, he hasn't actually got sent off this season, because some of his tackles have been wild, and he lives on the edge a little bit. But yeah, he hasn't been sent off, so it's not really a problem.
All right. Well, according to Opta, Chelsea have a 49.2% probability of landing 7th in the Premier League table.
These Opta things are such bullshit. I love Opta.
I hear you.
We have a contract. We have a contract at the Telegraph with Opta, so I need to praise them a lot. They help me a lot. Whenever I ask for stats, Opta help me. Their stats guys are amazing. Opta amazing. But these predicted tables and things, I mean, I've been looking at them from a Villa point of view all season.
Yeah.
And you do come to realize they are such bullshit.
Well, you're telling me you don't have a 95% confidence Villa are going to be 4th like this does?
Exactly. And what happens to that? What happens to that when Spurs beat Burnley 6-0 and Villa lose at home to Liverpool?
No.
And then maybe, yeah, but you know, they literally swing on result. They swing so wildly on one result.
No
anyway,
doubt.
Carry on. Sorry.
All I was framing is it most likely looks like Chelsea are going to land 6th, 7th, 8th. And I wanted your eye test, your non-analytical test to see, how do you see this is shaking up? Like, Chelsea still have 3 matches. Manchester United seem to just be in a bad place, but they still have the FA Cup. So do they kind of like bin the season and focus on the FA Cup? Newcastle seem to be doing well. Spurs are on a bit of a slide too. So I still think there's going to be a little bit of shakeup between this maybe the Europa League, Conference League teams. How do you see this shaking out?
United are out of it. United are screwed. United play Arsenal and Newcastle, and then Brighton away, and Brighton are starting to get some players back, starting to get some confidence. That will be their last home game of the season. I can see United picking up 1, 2 points before the end of the season. I think Chelsea could win all their games in now. I really do. But I also think haven't Newcastle. I know Newcastle have to play Man United, which on paper always looks tricky, but at the moment that's a gimme for Newcastle. I think Newcastle have got quite a nice run in from what I remember. I can't remember it all off the top of my head. You might be about to tell me I'm horribly wrong. So my guess
Brighton and Newcastle is it, because they just waxed Burnley. So yeah.
Sorry, who did Newcastle play? Who have Newcastle got left?
Brighton at home, and then United away at the last.
Yeah, so I'm taking Newcastle to take 6 points out of those. Brighton away is different to Brighton at home. So on that basis, I think Newcastle will hold on to 6th and that Chelsea will go 7th. But I think Chelsea could win. Actually, if Chelsea win all their matches in, do they then go above Newcastle? Because they've got...
Potentially. So we're on 54 points. Newcastle are on 56, right? We both have, well, this says 3 matches to play, but Newcastle just have 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've got a game in hand on Newcastle, I haven't got the table up in front of me at the moment.
It says it's even. So who's their 3rd match?
If they're the same amount...
Go ahead.
I'm going to look now.
I've got it. So they have their 3rd match. There you go. Their last match is against Brentford for Newcastle. Literally, it was on the next page. So they've got Brentford away, the last match of the season, United away, and Newcastle or Brighton at home in reverse order.
Okay. So I actually think both Newcastle and Chelsea could win their way in because they're both in good form. So I'm going to probably predict that Newcastle hold on to 6 only from their own form, not through any dip in Chelsea's form particularly. I quite fancy Chelsea to win their way in or win 2 and draw 1. And yeah, I don't see United being part of the picture.
Tottenham.
And I think Tottenham. I can't see Tottenham not picking up 6 points against Burnley and Sheffield United. Burnley have to go into Tottenham and try and win, which puts the seed of doubt in your head at this time of year. You get the odd, strange result where a team who's really up against relegation will pull a result out. But I know they lost to Arsenal at home. They're generally stronger Arsenal at home. Tottenham are. So I think Tottenham will take 6 points out their last 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that United have to play Arsenal at home, then Newcastle at home, and then Brighton away to end the season, to your point, is like, oh, tough run for them. Tottenham, if they get past Burnley, they should feel really comfortable. And then it's really going to come down to Newcastle and Chelsea, just blow for blow. Can we make up the 2 points on them? It's going to be tough. They have a much better goal difference as well. I think they're like plus 22, we're plus 11. So you don't see that getting made up. But and then it comes down to the FA Cup as well.
Well, this is where I'm unclear. So I should know this, and I'm sorry because this has only dawned on me as I'm talking to you, and I don't know why it hasn't dawned on me before, and I've not looked it up. If Chelsea were to finish sixth and Man United win the FA Cup and therefore get in the Europa League, what does sixth get you?
I think Conference League, it bumps everyone down.
It bumps it down. Okay. But they're not going to win the FA Cup. That's just not going to happen.
And if we get seventh,
die on that hill.
Thank you. And if we get seventh and United were to win, I think we get bumped out.
Right. Okay. Look, as a Chelsea fan, would you rather be in the Conference League or no Europe?
I don't know. I've gone back and forth with this too, but I think, like, are we able to say the Conference League is below us? I mean, it's a different competition, right?
But here's my argument to you. I think the Conference League is a good competition. There are some good teams in the Conference League. I don't think it's as Mickey Mouse as maybe we thought it was when it was set up. Lille were a really good team. Lille are a good side. Olympiacos are a good side. We played a bad Ajax, admittedly. Legia Warsaw were no knockovers. There's decent teams in there. Now, yeah. I'm going to make 2 more points on why I think the Conference League would be beneficial to Chelsea and that people shouldn't write it off for them. One, there's a lot of young players in this Chelsea team who haven't really played much European football, some of whom might not have played any European football. So just playing European football and the rhythm of Thursday, Sunday, obviously if it's Champions League, it's Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday, but Thursday, Sunday, the rhythm of that European football is important for them to learn. That's one thing. And the second one, and this is what I'd think Chelsea fans everywhere would back me up on, is at the moment you can't sing you've won it all. When you sing you've won it all, it's not true because you haven't won the Conference League. So you've got to go and win the Conference League. And then you've won it all again.
To your point, it would be a good, obviously Europa League, you always going to be the best competition. But to your point, we do need to get the club back to playing European away days midweek, Premier League matches on the weekend. So I do agree with you. And the fact, like, if once Thiago Silva leaves to go back to Fluminense, our average age will drop again, right? And we will be that like 23, sub-23 team that this would be good. To your point, Lille's in here. There was Dinamo Zagreb, who has Champions League pedigree, Club Brugge, Villa, obviously running from the Premier League, Fiorentina, which is a good one, Fenerbahce, Eintracht Frankfurt. So yeah, look, I think if it's a good situation to be. You want to be in the best competitions you can. So we're scrapping, we're fighting. But I tell you what.
And also at the end of the day, it will be a great chance to win a trophy. And I joke about the we've won it all thing. But, again, we talked about what the Carabao Cup might have done for Chelsea, what winning a trophy might do for them. You can't pick and choose your trophies all the time, and winning a trophy would be good to them. So, look, I'm fully signed up to the fact that Conference League would be much, much better than nothing.
Yeah.
I think Europa League would be great. I think I said at the start of the season, if Chelsea can finish top 6 and either win a cup or have a cup run, and I'm sure you can dig this out, that'll actually be a really good season. That is the best I ever thought they could do. And I would challenge anybody to find me saying anything differently from the start of the season. That was always my position. They should have won the Carabao Cup. They could have got to an FA Cup final. And if they somehow nick 6th, somehow this chaotic, odd season, for me, will have ended up a very, very decent season.
Yeah, well, we've...
And you have to just accept that Chelsea are not about to win Premier League titles. They're not about to finish in the top 3.
Yes.
That's just the reality.
As of today, which is great because I still want to talk to you about Blueco and kind of like moving forward. So we're going to take our last ad break. Thank you to sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right. Thanks for the reality check before that, Matt. We know we're not top 3 winning the Premier League, but Klopp's leaving. So, there's another spot to be had, right? There's a little room at the top to fill.
Opportunity knocks for sure.
So a lot as we're getting ready to the end, I think if you have any insight in kind of like how things are going, I'm sure Pochettino is probably spending as much time on his end of season presentation for the sporting directors and the owners as much as he is preparing for these last matches, because it wasn't linear, right? There was a lot that went on this season. He's even talked about, you have to look at the entire situation. So he's putting out that in his press conferences, but we're really close to kind of what I would say saving the season and like meeting minimum expectations. But how are you seeing it? What are you hearing about kind of like the tone about this season and how it's gone?
Yeah, I think everybody's struggling to find the right tone. I think everybody has their sort of opinions and everybody has different tones through the season and are struggling to set on a tone. And I still think, this sounds mad, but I still think that the reason we don't sit here today very confident that Pochettino will be manager next season is because should they go to Nottingham Forest at the weekend and lose, it only takes that kind of thing to set everything back again and put everything back into doubt again. I don't agree that should be the case, but that does seem to be the case. And I still think there's a fear within the club to really put out a strong message of support or anything like that, whilst it could still all fall away and cause uncertainty. I would like to see them ignore that. I would point out that in Klopp's first season at Liverpool finished 8th. They got to a Europa League final and a Carabao Cup final, lost them both. And at the end of that season, Liverpool gave him a new contract as a statement. I'm not saying necessarily Chelsea should give Pochettino a new contract, but I do think by now, actually, it would have been beneficial for us to know that there's no plan change, and because I don't think there should be a plan change. If there's a change now, for me, it'll be because it's personal and because of relationships. I don't think there's a good football reason to make a change, and I mean that in that you can think Pochettino should have done better, but I don't think there's a guarantee manager out there to guarantee anything better. And I think the up curve and the second half of the season would be enough. So I do think if there's a change made or there's doubts made, it's because of relationships and personal issues. And if there's a disagreement on how this goes forward. Now, that's where we get interesting, because I think Pochettino has been fairly clear that he wants to find out a bit about where the club plan to go at the end of the season in terms of transfer strategy, in terms of how they deal with injuries, in terms of how they deal with other things. And I don't think the decision is his, because I don't think he'd ever quit, but I think he could sort of talk himself out of a job if he's not careful, if he says things that don't necessarily align with the way the club want to go. So we're in a bit of a state of flux. I think another summer of disruption, both in terms of management and whole-scale squad, would be the worst thing that could happen for Chelsea this summer. They've had 2 summers of massive disruption coming off the back of all the sanctions disruption. It's felt like non-stop disruption, to be quite honest. And that's not just the new owner's fault. That comes from before them too, in terms of the sanctions. And I think the club desperately need a stable summer now, where they can implement strategy and where they can make informed tweaks rather than radical overhauls. So for me, changing the manager at this point would be the worst thing they could do. But let's see. See.
You want a normal summer? How about 5 matches in the United States for the 3rd summer running, right? How about going California to Indiana to Georgia to Ohio to North Carolina and then back across overseas? And who knows, might throw in a random friendly in Italy on the way back just for shits and giggles, because we've seen them do that. But
that's not just. So many Premier League clubs have these mad schedules now, not just Chelsea. I think it has got crazy with the summer schedules, but it's again a bit like I was talking about with the defence before. I think it's a league issue as much as it is a club issue.
Yeah, in Euros.
But yeah, it's not going to be any. Exactly. It's not going to be any summer with a tournament in it. First of all, is never an easy summer to navigate, and it's not with that schedule that they've drawn up, which will be very lucrative, I'm sure. It won't be an easy summer for any coach to navigate and have the team in the best possible condition come the first game of next season, which seems mad to say, but lots of clubs will be in that position, not just Chelsea.
Yeah, not wrong, but we're worried about our situation and trying to rectify this.
Yeah,
stuff.
Of course. I'm just trying to be fair to them. Oh, yeah. It's not just Chelsea.
No doubt. With the project and everything that's going right, so like there's still a lot that's in flux too, not just the manager, because there's the stadium. There's the season ticket prices, and also like the Blue Co project seems to have paused. Do you remember when they were like, we're going to buy 3 or 4 clubs, and now they've just got Strasbourg, and that's not gone well. I guess, how's it going for the group? Maybe Boli's changed roles, you said, and Iqbali's a little bit more involved. There's just still
there's been a lot of change, and there's still a lot of changes within the group. I mean, remember, the stadium, ridiculously, in my opinion, went back to square one, because once they brought in Gannon and some other people, who I'm not saying are bad hires at all. I mean, Gannon's CV looks fantastic for it, but once they did that, for whatever reason, they just took it all the way back to square one and started again. So that's gone back to square one. There's all these people come in, and it sent lots of different things back to square one. They've been back and forth within the club internally about what to do on season tickets, absolutely beating themselves up about how to best pitch it, terrified of the fan response. I think recently they announced in a very small way on their website somewhere that the announcement on season tickets was now going to be made at the end of the season. That feels very much sort of because they fear of a reaction at games, and they fear a reaction from fans when it does come out. I've heard it's maybe not going to be quite as brutal as people feared and bad as people feared. And I'm not saying it's going to be good news, but I don't think it's going to be the terrible, terrible news that a few people feared. But that's the most pressing one. They're going to have to get that out. And, they will hope they keep winning, because at the end of the day, football clubs, when the form is good, it really helps these announcements on painful stuff like season ticket price increases, which is for sure coming. We've seen, I was at the game the other day, and we could, against West Ham, and you could see that a lot of the West View was empty seats because the prices have gone up in there. So, there is some voting with feet going on in Chelsea fans. So there is still that the results haven't completely obliterated the difficulty people are finding with pricing. So that's a big issue for them. The stadium seems to have gone completely back to square one. For whatever reason, nobody at the club will talk to you about it. I find it frustrating. I find it slightly insulting to the fans. I think there should have been a much better process. They will tell you till they're blue in the face that they talk to the fan advisory board and blah, 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 blah. But then the fan advisory board put out in that statement they put out not long ago that they're not necessarily allowed to pass on everything they're told. So talking to them is a complete waste of time, in my view. I think there should be some proper communication around that. They don't have to publicise everything they're doing. It's completely unrealistic. But let's hear where they are, where they hope to be, what their actual plan of attack is, because I find it, like I say, I find it borderline insulting that there's just been a complete shutting up of shop on that.
Well, I will say, as I'm clicking around the Chelsea website, they have added some pop-up ads on the bottom. So, they're grabbing revenue from ad clicks now too, which is new.
But there's also there's the sponsorships. There's some big things,
big
hanging over them. I mean, we could, at the moment, I'm pretty sure not only do they not have a front of shirt sponsor for next season, but I'm pretty sure they don't have a sleeve sponsorship for next
Trivago
season.
Staying
the sleeve sponsorship
for the training.
The training kit's different, isn't it? Isn't that
Trivago?
Bing's going to be one of them. So they're all swapping over the place. We don't know. We know they haven't got a front of shirts yet. I'm pretty sure they haven't got a sleeve yet. again, are we going to start a season where they don't have sponsors on the shirts? The fans loved it, but come on, this is meant to be one of Europe's top clubs. They can't get into a situation like that again. So that there are some big things to get over the line and get sorted for sure.
It's gonna be, look, they've hired enough people. It seems like they've got the people in the front office to get it done. So we'll see. But can we end on a positive note, Matt?
Of course, I like to.
Chelsea won a trophy.
Could you tell me?
The U18s won the Premier League South, and they're going to be taking on Manchester United at Stamford Bridge for the national final. Coach Suleiman and the squad having a fantastic season. Phil, Parth, and Dan did the review yesterday, so that'll be out on the feeds. Make sure to check it out. But a little bit of glory back to Cobham. You love to see it.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that what they do there is incredible. And yeah, Manchester United are strong these days at that level, I think. So that could be a really interesting game. I used to go, and back before I sort of had kids and I had a little bit more free time, I always used to go to the FA Youth Cup finals at Stamford Bridge and used to really enjoy watching those. So I would urge anyone who has the time and the money to go and watch one of those. I know it's not the FA Youth Cup, but I always find them very interesting. You always think you've seen the next Lionel Messi and the next star, and then the person who actually ends up being the star is rarely the one you think it's going to be. It's incredible how these development paths work, but it's very interesting. And of course, the women incredibly can still also win the league. I mean, that was, I know you have the special pod on the women, but that was phenomenal. So that could yet end in glory. And as you said, the season for Chelsea could still end well. It's how to sum this when it comes to it, when the season ends and you actually try and sum this season up and you try and find a word to describe this season, it's going to be virtually impossible.
No doubt about it. I'm sure Dan will try to force us into a 3-word season review or something silly, and we'll fail at our best attempts. So.
Can I do my worst ever swear on this and give you mine of what the fuck?
I mean, it's quite honestly, everybody's in that spot week to week, right? Its sentiment changes if we're going to burn it all down,
and that could mean anything. That phrase can mean anything. It can mean it in a negative sense or in a positive sense. That's why I think it sums it up pretty well.
Probably appropriately, a bewildered sense.
A bewildered sense, yeah, exactly.
Constant confusion at what's going on. So brilliant, Matt. Well, we appreciate the breakdown as always. We'll get ready for summer, right? That's looming over you as well. Euros, I'm sure it's going to be busy.
I haven't got one. I've got the Euros, yeah. I haven't got a summer.
Well,
what's summer?
Yeah, not for you, but for the rest of us, we'll sit there for all of June wondering what top tournament player is going to get bought by the European clubs. Always happens. It'll be good. All right.
Cheers.
All right, Chelsea fans. Well, more content on the feed as always, but until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.